Test. Test. We're trying this test. Let me see how this mic is working. Test, test with this mic.
Oh dear. Yes, the first question is as follows.
Okay, I don't know if these are going to be working with this. They're usually designed more for these.
Right.
So you'll just have to use your.
Yeah, well, I'm going to use that anyway.
Yeah, but I don't know if these are working.
Right.
So
Is that working more?
yeah, it doesn't look like it's working. It's going a bit of it, but people just have to be loud. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So great. All right. Because I was expecting to go from my phone, but we've had some tech things, so.
No, that was just the way they came. Sorry, what you had in mind. Years experience.
to take your seats, please. Okay, you're welcome to use these seats behind as well, by the way. They're not reserved for anyone. All right. Okay, Brain of London 2 final. I shall hand over to your official, Andrew Fraser, in a second, just to introduce the 4 players. Quiet, please. We shall have a new name on the cup plate thing this year for first-time finalists. So, in seat 1, Mark Eaves. Seat 2, Tim Hall. Seat 3, he kept us guessing as to whether he was going to make it at all. Fresh off the train from Manchester, Will Swigert. And seat 4, Andrew Fanko.
Okay, thank you very much, Josh. And if everyone's ready, it is coming up to 19:45. We can start 50 seconds early with Mark's first 3 questions in round 1. Mark, which chocolate and hazelnut confection is named after its inventor and a grotto at Lourdes? An example of faux posh branding, which is known for its ambassador's party advert. It's correct. Ferrero Rocher is correct. Mark, introduced in the initial 1987 game, which Japanese martial artist is the main protagonist of Street Fighter? He encourages new fighters, but later develops 2 darker alter egos, Evil, this character, and Cage. Pass, Tim. Ryu is correct, that's a point to Tim. And back to Mark. The first Franco-Mexican War of 1838-9 is alternatively known by the name of which foodstuff? Pastry is correct. That's the second point to Mark, and we come on to Tim's 3. Tim, which river forms most of the border between Austria and Slovakia? It rises in the Czech Republic, where it names an historical region, and meets the Danube just before Bratislava. Pass to Will. Pass to Andrew. Pass to Mark. That is a pass to all. It's Morava, from which Moravia takes its name. Tim, what is the alliterative animal-related franchise name of the Australian Rugby League team from Penrith in Western Sydney, winners of 3 successive NRL Grand Finals from 2021 to 23? It is the Panthers, correct. And Tim, your third. Which film director turned 87 on the 30th of November 2024? He remains a prolific filmmaker, with his most recent release, Gladiator 2, debuting in the UK that month. Ridley Scott is correct. Will, which is the only one of Italy's 20 regions to have neither a coastline nor an international border? Communes in this region include Orvieto, Spoleto, and Assisi.
Pass.
So pass to Andrew.
Pass.
So pass to Mark. Umbria is correct for Mark. Will, which John Steinbeck novel concerns 2 travelling ranch workers, George and Lenny, trying to earn money to buy their own farm? Its title references a poem by Robert Burns and a 1992 film adaptation starred John Malkovich. Of Mice and Men. Correct. Yeah. Your third question, Will. Which American pop singer topped the BBC Radio 1 Sound of 2025 poll, although she'd already become a huge star in 2024? This performer of hits like Pink Pony Club and Phenomenon models her aesthetic on drag queens. Chapel Roan is correct. And 3 questions for Andrew. Andrew, who won the 1918 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for inventing a namesake process for the industrial synthesis of ammonia? That award is controversial because this man oversaw the German chemical weapons program in the First World War.
Harbour.
Harbour is correct, Fritz Harbour. Your second. Running since 2015, which ITV crime drama stars Sanjeev Bhaskar as Sunny Khan, a detective in a team that investigates cold cases of disappearance and murder?
Sorry,
Nicola Walker co-starred as his boss in the first 4 seasons.
unforgotten.
Unforgotten is correct. And your third question, which French composer wrote the 1920 so-called choreographic poem La Valse? He is best known for another orchestral work named for a dance, Bolero.
Ravel.
Maurice Ravel is correct. That is the end of round 1. And the scores see Mark, Tim, and Andrew all on 3. Will on 2. And Mark and Tim have had bonus attempts. So we now come to round 2 and Mark's 3 questions. Nicknamed the Bambino, which New York Yankees star held the record for the most career MLB home runs with 714 until overtaken by Hank Aaron in 1974? Babe Ruth is correct. Which river forms the border between Moldova and Romania? Rising in Ukraine, it is the last major tributary of the Danube.
Easter.
It's not the Dniester. Will? Andrew?
Pass.
Tim? It is the Pruth, or Put. And Mark, your third question. Which John Steinbeck novel concerns a family of sharecroppers driven from the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression? Its title references the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and the 1940 film adaptation starred Henry Fonda as Tom Joad. Grapes of Wrath is correct. Tim, your questions. Which former US Army soldier was convicted for disclosing classified documents about the Iraq and Afghanistan wars to WikiLeaks? The remainder of her sentence under the Espionage Act was later commuted by Barack Obama. Chelsea Manning is correct. Tim, which brand of dessert made by Unilever consists of several rippled layers of ice cream separated by thin layers of sprayed-on compound chocolate? Viennetta is correct. And Tim, which BBC Two crime drama of the 2010s was set in Northern Ireland and starred Gillian Anderson as Stella Gibson, a police superintendent tasked with tracking down the serial killer Paul Spector, played by Jeremy Dornan? Is correct. Sorry, what did you say? No, the lake is incorrect. So that goes to Will. It is The Fall. Right, well, to Will's questions. Will, which American scientist gives his name to the law and constant that relate the recessional velocity of galaxies to their distance apart? It provided the first observational evidence for the expansion of the universe and the Big Bang. It's not Hoyle. Andrew?
Pass.
Mark? Tim? It's Hubble, Edwin Hubble. Will, which physicist who won a Nobel in 1923 for measuring the elementary charge in his oil drop experiment has been accused of cherry-picking data in his 1913 paper on the subject, leaving many drops out? Andrew?
Milgram.
No, it's wrong. Mark? Millikan is correct. And Will, your third, Masters is the surname of which Street Fighter character, also introduced in the initial title in the franchise. This family man is less devoted to training than Ryu, while a later brainwashed variant was known as Violent, this character. Ken is correct. And Andrew? Andrew, the War of the Bavarian Succession in 1778-9 is alternatively known as the Plum Fuss, or by the name of which foodstuff?
Could you spell the German word?
Yeah, Plum Fuss, it's not a German word, it's plum and fuss.
Oh, plum, okay.
Ten seconds.
Sausage.
It's not sausage, Tim. Will?
Pass.
Mark? Pass. It is the potato war. Well, if I had to spell the German word, it would have been Kartoffelkrieg. But that's an alternative answer. Andrew, what is the alliterative animal-related franchise name of the Australian Rugby League team from Brisbane, runners-up to Penrith in the 2023 NRL Grand Final? The name is a tribute to a team co-founder's favourite NFL team.
Broncos.
Broncos is correct. And your third, which film director turned 89 on the 30th of November 2024? This controversial figure's most recent release was 2023's Coup de Chance, but his Oscar-winning films include Blue Jasmine and Bullets Over Broadway.
Alan.
Woody Allen is correct. And that's the end of round two. So the scores now are 6 to Mark, 5 to Tim, 4 to Will, and 5 to Andrew. And Mark's had 2 bonus attempts, and everyone else has had 1. So in one moment, it'll be round 3. Mark, which American chemist was nominated 41 times for a Nobel Prize but never won, despite introducing the concepts of the covalent bond and the electron pair, and devising his namesake dot structure diagrams? He was reputedly blocked by a friend of his lifelong enemy, Walter Nernst. Pass to Tim, pass to Will, and Andrew.
Pass.
That is Lewis, Gilbert Lewis. Mark, in his final term, Donald Trump issued a posthumous pardon to which proponent of women's suffrage who had been convicted for voting in a presidential election? In 1979, she became the first woman to appear on a US coin. Susan B. Anthony is correct. Mark, if Apulia is the heel of Italy and Calabria the toe, which region, home to the caves of Matera, may be described as the arch or instep? Reflecting its period of Byzantine rule, the name of this region derives from the Greek for king. Basilicata is correct. And Tim, your 3. Chapel Rowan's debut album, released in 2023, was entitled The Rise and Fall of a Blank. What 2 words, perhaps referring to Rowan's upbringing in Missouri, complete that title?
Exotic Princess.
It's wrong, not Exotic Princess, Will.
Midwest Princess.
Midwest Princess is correct. Will. Tim, Flight 714 or 714 to Sydney was the penultimate story featuring which Quiff sporting Belgian reporter, to be completed by Auger? That's correct. And your third, the San Juan boundary dispute, an 1859 confrontation between the USA and UK, is alternatively known as the Blank War. What edible creature, the only casualty in the conflict, fills the blank? San Juan. Yeah. Okay. Ten seconds. It is the pig war. Will, which brand of dark milk, which brand of dark mint chocolates first became associated with Mayfair in 1932? They are typically sold in black and green boxes with the individual sweets wrapped in green foil. Sorry, was that?
Viscounts.
Not Viscounts. Andrew?
Bendix.
This is Bendix, alternative. Will, what is the animal-related franchise name of the Australian Rugby League team South Sydney, runners-up to Penrith in the 2021 NRL Grand Final? The name supposedly derives from the cry of hawkers selling these animals meat. Rabbitohs is correct. And your third, which Finnish composer reworked earlier incidental music for the play Kuolema to create the 1905 short orchestral piece Valse Triste? Other works by this man include The Swan of Tuonela and Finlandia. Sibelius is correct. And finally, Andrew, which John Steinbeck novel follows two families, the Hamiltons and the Trusks, and references the story of Cain and Abel in the Bible? A 1955 film adaptation stars James Dean as Caleb Trask.
East of Eden.
East of Eden is correct. Your second, Herman Bondi and Fred Hoyle developed which now largely rejected theory as an alternative to the Big Bang. It posits that the universe remains homogeneous and isotropic in space and time as it expands due to the constant creation of matter.
Pass.
So pass to Tim. Here's the steady state model, that's one to Tim. And Andrew. Several important characters join Ryu in Street Fighter II. Among them was which Chinese martial artist, the first playable female character from a mainstream fighting game? She seeks revenge for the death of her father, caused by the series antagonist, M. Bison.
Sue.
It's not Sue. Mark. Pass to Tim. Chun-Li is correct. That's a point to Tim. And that's the end of round 4. Round 3, rather. With the scores now being 8 to Mark, 9 to Tim, and 7 each to Will and Andrew. And the bonus attempts being 3 by Tim and 2 by everyone else. So Mark, your questions in round 4. Which ITV crime drama of the 2010s starred Anna Friel as the titular detective who has to balance memory blackouts and a failed marriage as she investigates the possible return of a dormant serial killer? Marcelo is correct. Which film director turned 77 on the 30th of November 2024? The Winslow Boy and State and Main are among the 10 films he has directed, although he is better known as the playwright of works like Speed the Plough and Glengarry Glen Ross. David Mamet is correct. And Mark, one remnant believed to be evidence for the Big Bang Theory is CMBR. If C stands for cosmic and BR for background radiation, but what does the M stand?
Mirroring.
Not mirroring. Will.
Pass.
Andrew.
Microwave.
Microwave. This one's for Andrew, yeah. Tim, now you're free. Also introduced in Street Fighter II, which character is a Japanese sumo wrestler? This character has above average strength but below average speed, and his little used forename is Edmund. Honda is correct, E Honda. Tim, which is Italy's smallest region by area and also its least densely populated? The name of this alpine valley ultimately derives from the name of the first Roman emperor. Yeah, Val d'Aosta Valley is correct. And Tim, which British composer of mixed race wrote the orchestral work Four Characteristic Waltzes? This composer of Hiawatha's Wedding Feast should not be confused with a romantic poet with a very similar three-part name. Samuel Coleridge Taylor is correct. Will, which river forms most of the border between Greece and Turkey? Rising in Bulgaria and flowing into the Aegean, it is the longest river entirely within the Balkans. So pass to Mark. It is the Maritsa, yeah, on to Mark. Will, what foodstuff follows War of the in the name of the 1801 Franco-Spanish invasion of Portugal?
Grapes.
It's not grapes. Andrew?
Pass.
Mark? Tim? It is oranges. And Will, your third. The Purcell 714 sunglasses are most commonly associated with which actor, who famously wore them in the Thomas Crown affair? This American actor also starred in The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven. Steve McQueen is correct. And finally, Andrew, your questions. The title of which single from Chapel Roan's The Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess is adapted from the title of an Oasis hit. The singer described this song as the gay girl version of that hit. Ten seconds.
Wonder Girl.
It's not Wonder Girl Will.
Red Wine Supernova.
It is Red Wine Supernova. That's a point to Will. Andrew, which Belgian chocolate brand, founded in 1958 by Guy Foubert, is best known for its seashell-shaped pralines?
Elon.
Gilliam is correct. And your third, which convicted bank robber and publishing heiress was pardoned by Bill Clinton? After being kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army, she joined the group and participated in their crimes. Ten seconds.
Father.
It's not Father. Mark. It is Hurst, Patty Hurst. That is the end of round 4. So the scores are now 12 apiece to Mark and Tim, and 9 apiece to Will and Andrew. And everyone's had 3 bonus attempts except Mark, who's had 4. So Mark, your final 3 questions. What is the animal-related franchise name of the Australian Rugby League team from Parramatta, runners-up to Penrith in the 2022 NRL Grand Final? The name derives from the meaning of Parramatta in an Aboriginal language. Swan. It's not Swan. Tim.
Eels.
It is Eels. Mark. After her viral Coachella performance in April 2024, 7 Chapel Roan songs entered the Billboard Hot 100 simultaneously. Among these songs, 2 shared the distinction of having a title ending with an exclamation mark. Name either. Pass to Will. Good luck, babe, or you could have had Hot to Go. It's one for Will, and back to Mark. Hector Berlioz's Invitation to the Waltz orchestrates the 1819 piano piece Invitation to the Dance, by which German composer of the early Romantic period, perhaps best known for the opera Der Freischütz. Say again?
Schubert.
Not Schubert. So it goes to Andrew.
Max Weber.
It is Max Weber. No, it's not. That's wrong. Tim and Will.
Pass.
It is Carl Maria von Weber.
Oh, so stupid.
Tim, your first question. Which phenomenon used to measure the recessional velocity of distant galaxies sees the wavelength of light emitted by an object increase as it moves away from the observer? That is an example of the Doppler effect. Will?
Pass.
Andrew?
Redshift.
It is Redshift. Andrew. Tim? Which early John Steinbeck novel set in Monterey, like his later Cannery Row, was adapted into a 1942 film starring Spencer Tracy and Hedy Lamarr? It follows Danny and his friends who live in the titular rundown district, the name of which reflects that many of its inhabitants are of Mexican descent.
Barrier?
It's not the barrier. Will?
Pass.
Mark? And Andrew?
Pass.
Pass. It is tortilla flat. And finally, Tim, which neurologist received the Nobel in Physiology or Medicine in 1949 for his development of the lobotomy? Although the award is often now considered an error, This man remains widely admired in his native Portugal. Will, Mark, Andrew.
Pass.
That is Antonio Egas Moniz. And we come to Will. The 2 seasons of BBC crime drama The Missing each explored a case of child abduction investigated by a French detective played by Checky Cario. What was the surname of this character? Also the title of a 2019 to 21 spin-off series. Not Villeneuve. Mark. Tim. Andrew.
Baptiste.
It was Baptiste. Will. Which film director turned 81 on the 30th of November 2024? His next film, The Way of the Wind, is scheduled to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, the same location where he won the Palme d'Or in 2011 for The Tree of Life. It is Terence Malick. And Will, your third. Richard Nixon commuted the sentence of which prominent Labour Union leader convicted of fraud and bribery? This man later disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Jimmy Hoffa is correct. And finally, Andrew. Anaheim is the largest city in which county of Southern California with the dining code 714? The first Real Housewives series was set in this county, which Ronald Reagan described as where all the good Republicans go to die.
Orange.
It is Orange County. Andrew, which south central region has the greatest diversity of animal species in Italy, including the Apennine wolf, the Marsican brown bear, and the chamois? Its capital is L'Aquila.
Used to know these.
Ten seconds.
No.
Pass to Mark. It's up to itself. Yeah, one to Mark. Andrew, which river forms most of the border between Croatia and Hungary? Rising in Italy, it is the second longest right bank tributary of the Danube after the Sava.
The VAR.
What the VAR? Tim? Will?
Pass.
Mark? Is the Drava. And that has brought us to the end. Or has it? The final scores, Andrew has 12, Will has 12, Tim has 13, Mark has 13. You two might swap it.
Yeah.
Right. I'd like to ask you to just ensure fair play. I'm sure they're not getting your fair play. People are going to ask all 3 questions, but people want to run change their previous answers after 30 seconds. And then at the end, I'll ask you both to read out your answers one by one. Okay, everyone, settle down, please. We now have a tie break between Mark and Tim. Consists of 3 questions, which I'm going to read out. Order. It consists of 3 questions, which I'm going to read out. They'll have 30 seconds to write down an answer to each. At the end of all 3 questions, we will ask them to reveal their answers one by one, and we'll see if someone has won or not. So, everyone ready? No whispering in the audience, hasn't been so far, so keep it good. Question 1. Name for an English chemist which law states that the concentration of a dissolved gas in a liquid is proportional to its partial pressure above the liquid. This explains decompression sickness and the fizzing of carbonated drinks when opened. Okay, we'll move on to question 2. Spy in the House of Love was a minor UK hit in 1987 for which art funk band from Detroit. Their next single, Walk the Dinosaur, was more successful, reaching the top 10 later that year. Ready? Yeah, okay, both ready on that. And finally, question 3 in this set. 2024 saw Peter Pellegrini elected president of which European country? The election came 1 month after this country's head of government, Prime Minister Robert Fico, was the subject of an attempted assassination. Okay, so we will now have the answers. First question was the English chemist who named that law about partial pressure above liquid. Mark, your answer? No answer. Not Dalton's law, it is Henry's law. Second question is Spy in the House of Love and Walk the Dinosaur. Mark doesn't know it. Was not was, or was not was. Whichever way. That's one to Tim. And finally, the Peter Pellegrini was which country's president? Slovakia is correct. Both that's Slovakia. So the final score on that tiebreak was 2 to Tim, 1 to Mark.
Thank you, Andrew. Wonderful final commiserations to the other 3. Tim, come and get your trophy. Okay, we've got 15 minutes until we move on to the plate final. Get yourselves a drink, whatever else, back to 15 minutes, please.